We're talking about Caleb Wilson. Rest in peace, Caleb Wilson. He passed away. He went to Southern University, and he was pledging. You think hazing should be removed from the pledging process, or is it tradition?
I have no idea because I'm not a Greek, but my only advice to the Greeks would be don't do things that could potentially kill people. Like, y'all not gangs jumping each other in. You're a fraternity. Think of something smarter to do.
In this video, I'm going to talk about my experience of pledging a fraternity and my experience of joining a gang. And you might be shocked to find out that pledging a fraternity can be even more dangerous than a gang initiation. Welcome to Rolling Ratchet.
Spread love, it's the Brooklyn way.
I'm your host that smokes the most. They call me Nizzy Nice. And let me say this off the rip. I am no longer a part of any gang. That's something I was involved with back in the day, my younger years, and I would never recommend anyone joining a gang. However, I'm only bringing it up because my gang initiation, the process was actually easier than when I was pledging. Now, I'm making this video because of Caleb Wilson, may he rest in peace, the young brother from Southern University who was pledging and died. And I see no cues, nobody from any other frats talking about this. I only see people coming online bashing Omega Psi Phi. And I would never bash Omega Psi Phi because I was pledging Omega Psi Phi. I wanted to be a Q. And there's some good brothers out here. But in any organization, you always have a few bad apples. Now, let's talk about this, right? And I'm not going to give up too many details. I don't want to expose or give out any secret rituals or anything. So I'm going to stay as vague as possible and just talk about my pledging process with Omega Psi Phi. It was a good experience. I think pledging can be a good thing if it's done right. But what nobody's talking about is you have some brothers that go overboard. You have some brothers that show up to the sets drunk, mad because they didn't got into an argument with their girl, and they actually take that out on some of the people that's pledging. And it's not supposed to be that way. But pledging is a good thing because you have to go through something to get something. Anything in life that you want that's worth having, you're going to have to go through something, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's financial. You're going to have to go through something to get it. And pledging is a process where you actually go through something. Now, it's a shame that this brother died. They said he was being punched in the chest. And the crazy part is everybody is different. The punches he took in his chest, I'm pretty sure it was a lot of other young men who was pledging, took those same punches, and it wasn't fatal to them. But it was fatal to this brother, Caleb, which means that everybody's body is different. Everybody's tolerance is different, and you just never know. But nobody, and I do mean nobody, should have to die to pledge any fraternity. That's not what fraternities are built on. However, you do have some individuals that go overboard. And this, to me, this is where leadership comes in at. The leadership. There should be older brothers from any fraternity. When they see something going on that's reckless, they're supposed to step in and say, nah, that's not what we're doing. You going overboard. But for whatever reason, this doesn't happen. Now, do I regret pledging Omega Psi Phi? No. And even though I never became an official member, because after 2 months of pledging, I found out that my chapter was suspended for hazing. So I never became a member. And when I transferred to LIU Brooklyn here in New York, I found out that Greek life is dead in New York. It's not like the South. In the South, everybody's a part of a fraternity or sorority, from the pastor to the mayor. You know what I mean? Everybody's in a frat or a sorority. New York is not like that. New York, I think, is too cool or just too busy to be on it like that. So I never finished pledging. But I do not regret my experience, and I actually wish I finished. I wish when I was pledging that my chapter wasn't on suspension. But I think some of these brothers from Omega Psi Phi, I think some of them should have, made some videos, maybe gave some statements like, nah, that's not what we're about. But everybody stayed silent, and I didn't think that was cool. You know what I mean? But I'm also making this video for any young man who's in college or any young man that's about to go to college and is thinking about pledging. Pledging can be a good thing if it's done right. Don't let nobody talk you out of it. If you made your mind up and this is what you want to do, then go forward with it. But I also want to tell you, man, you got to know your limit. And when you feel like you're taking too much, you got to speak up. Don't be worried about being called weak or a bitch or whatever. You'd rather be called a bitch than be called deceased. Now let's talk about why some dudes pledge a fraternity. Some dudes pledge just for the girls and the parties, especially if you at an HBCU. I was at an HBCU. Matter of fact, I wasn't just at an HBCU. I was at the oldest HBCU. Shout out to Cheney University, the first black college that was ever established. And the atmosphere, the energy on campus was crazy with the step shows and just the whole vibe. So a lot of people get caught up in that. And that's why they pledge. But most people pledge for their lifelong connections, especially with Omega Psi Phi. Their network is serious. Let's take a look at some of the most famous members of Omega Psi Phi. So let's talk about Omega Psi Phi's most popular member, the GOAT after LeBron James. That would be Michael Jordan. Then we got Shaq. To me, this is a funny one, man, because Shaq is like over 7 foot, 300 and some pounds. Like, how you pledge this dude? You can't make him do nothing. I guess you had to ask him nicely to do everything. Then you had comedian Steve Harvey, Stephen A. Smith, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and civil rights attorney Ben Crump, and this year's Super Bowl champion and Super Bowl MVP, Jalen Hurts. Let's talk about how the network works. For example, you just graduated from college, you pledged Omega or any other fraternity, and let's say you're going for an IT position at Verizon. You will call up your fraternity and ask, like, yo, do we got any members in the corporate sector of Verizon? And they might say, you know what, I think so, let's check. And they check and they find out they got some members that do work in the corporate division of Verizon. Those guys that work there are going to do their best to make sure that you get hired. That's how the network works. It's connections. And when it comes to connections, nobody got more connections than the Masons. Like, you talk about somebody with some ill connections. Let me give y'all 2 quick stories, man, about the Masons. My homie got a gun charge, right? Got caught with a gun here in New York City. He hired a lawyer that was a Mason. And most judges are Masons. Now, most Masons, their communication is nonverbal. It's more body language. They do a lot of signs and stuff. My man said he's sitting in court and he's watching his lawyer just do these funny gestures and the judge is doing them back at him. Short story short, my man got 6 months probation for a gun. That's unheard of here in New York City. But those are the type of connections that Masons have. Let me tell you one more story about a Mason, right? I know a guy, I think he got arrested maybe 2 or 3 times for suspended license, on the same suspended license, right? But this time he said he's sitting in the precinct. He starts talking to a cop. He finds out that the cop is a Mason. This dude is sitting in the precinct with his hands cuffed. He said the cop walked up to him and said, yo, I'm going to take these handcuffs off you, but it's up to you to make it out the front door. Why dude made it home? Connections. That's all life is about. The more connections you got with the right people, the easier your life could be. Now, to anyone watching this video and you've been thinking about pledging a fraternity or a sorority, if you've done your research, I'm going to say do it. Go through with it. But just remember, don't be no fool and don't be no hero. If they're doing a demonstration and you had enough punishment, you feel like your body can't take it, you about to fall out, speak up and say something. Because if they real, they going to respect it. And don't worry about people and what they say about you pledging, because a lot of people are not going to understand why you pledging, but you know why. But just know you're going to have to go through it to get to it. Anything worthwhile having, you're going to have to go through something, whether it's physical, mental, or financial. I'll give you another example. I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. You know how many ass kickings I had to take just to get that blue belt? But what better way to learn how to fight than to fight? Me trying to learn how to fight without actually fighting would be like a person trying to learn how to swim without getting in the water. It's just not going to work. And to anyone watching this video that's already part of a fraternity or a sorority, be better. Even if you got done dirty when you was pledging, that don't mean you got to turn around and do your pledgees dirty. Because that's a lot of times that's what happens. It's just a bad cycle. You was online, you got done terrible. They put you through all type of stuff. So now when you pledging people, you trying to do the same thing. I'm going to say break that cycle and do better. But hey, as always, I want to thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. I'm your host that smokes the most. They call me Nizzy Nice, and we rolling ratchet.